Coming up on this week's edition of Ncba's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll discuss the latest beef export numbers and examine the opportunity for the year ahead. And we'll hear how the Beef Checkoff works to increase demand for U.S. beef all around the globe.
And now, Ncba's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. 2019 was another outstanding year for beef exports, and there's no question that these global markets play a pivotal role in the success of the U.S. beef industry. We asked cattlemen and women to share their thoughts on why it's important to continue to create demand for U.S. beef in international markets.
We've been doing a great job recently with Asia and really securing and opening up those markets. And I think the world likes American beef, and I want to supply it.
The demand is there. We just need to work it, and these new trade regulations eliminate a lot of tariffs and barriers, and I think we're going to benefit from it down the road.
I think it's very important to our industry. It really just affects the market so much, and with things opening up, we're excited about that.
We've got a real opportunity here. Seems to be a lot of good work went into getting us a better Mexico and Canada trade, and I think China will be a showstopper if we get all the way to their plate with our beef.
I think it's a really good opportunity for us as beef producers. I think that kind of broadens our horizons, and I think it's something to be excited about.
As a cattleman around this country, send this beef worldwide, it's kind of like having the Cadillac of the industry. I think we have the best beef in the world.
The importance of exports to the U.S. beef industry has been well documented, and the U.S. Meat Export Federation works hard every day to enhance demand for our product overseas. Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Russell Nemitz has more on this important topic.
Well, without question, export markets continue to play a very important role for the entire U.S. beef cattle industry. And with us on today's segment to talk more about export markets is one of this industry's leading experts in this area, Dan Hallstrom, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the U.S. Meat Export Federation. And Dan, before we talk about all of the exciting news on the trade front since the first of this year, let's take a look back at last year's export numbers and what led to some of those successes.
Well, I think all things considered, 2019 turned out to be a pretty darn good year. We're going to be down slightly from the 2018 record year, but just by a couple percentage points. And considering the headwinds we had with Japan and with Europe and some other of the key markets, I kind of would consider this being a success in 2019. And as you alluded to, we have a lot of good news going into 2020.
Well, let's talk more about that, because since the first of the year, we've had a new trade deal go into effect with our friends in Japan. Then we had the Phase 1 trade agreement signing with the Chinese, and just most recently, USMCA signed into law. In all your time at USMEF, could have you imagined having three major trade deals like what I just mentioned happen within the course of just a few weeks?
No, you can't imagine that all would happen in a few weeks. It's like Christmas reborn, but no, it's good news. I'm especially excited, though, about this Japan deal. Japan's been our number one market for decades. It's a reliable market, buying 52 weeks of the year, and getting us on a level playing field with our competition, primarily Australia, to the tune of a 12.5-13% disadvantage last year. January 1, we're even. So really that's all we ask, is that we're on an even playing field. And I think we're enabled now to really make some inroads in 2020 in terms of regaining lost market share. And as it turns out, the timing is pretty darn good, because we all know what's going on in Australia. They've been in a bit of a liquidation mode, and their numbers are down. So what better time to really make an impact and regain some of this share?
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about where we were at last year at this time in 2019. You just talked about some of those opportunities this year. Do you think with everything we've already talked about, we could get back to where we were in 2018, some of those record-setting numbers?
I think without a doubt Japan will be setting a new record this year. Our estimates show that we're going to go from $2 billion in sales to 2.2 or 2.3, and then within a couple of years, 2.5 plus. Now, there's a lot of things that play into that, but we definitely have the wherewithal to see a dramatic increase in business there. That being said, other key markets that are also playing into this, Korea was a $1.8 billion market, and we see that going over $2 billion this year as well. So Japan and Korea are two mainstay markets that really we leaned on forever, and it's going to continue to be the case.
Let's talk a little bit more about the opportunities now that we do have that Phase 1 trade agreement in place with the Chinese. Pretty exciting news not too many years ago when the doors opened back to U.S. beef in China. What lies ahead here in the new year and beyond in China?
Yeah, I think the Phase 1 deal is good news, but it's just that. It's Phase 1. It's not Nirvana, so to speak, because we still have some restrictions, but we've made a lot of progress. And the hormone requirement being dropped, the traceability requirement being altered much more favorably. This is good news in terms of total cattle that will qualify for China. Now, we do still have some negatives, not to focus on negatives, but we still have a 47% duty on U.S. beef into China. Now, the other good news in this whole thing, and really I don't like to stray and talk too much about competing proteins, but they have a heck of a problem in China on pork. 25% of the world's supply is gone for this ASF virus. So total protein is short, and no doubt this is going to benefit all species. Poultry business is already up, consumption is up on poultry, and no doubt beef will follow. So I think it's a good news story, even though it's only Phase 1.
Absolutely. How does that impact your overseas staff, whether it's China or Japan or even in Korea? Do you ramp up your staff a little bit, so to speak, over there to make sure that this U.S. beef and other red meat protein from this country stay front and center on that plate?
Yes. Over the years, we've become very nimble, very fluid in how we react because these market conditions seem like every month something's changing. So we're used to that. But exactly right. We have to adapt to the conditions. And whether it's the Japan deal or this China Phase 1 deal, we've already been in the process of adjusting and getting ready to make an impact.
Well, as always, we appreciate you taking a little bit of time for us and joining us back here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Again, we've been visiting with Dan Hallstrom, the president and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation. And as he mentioned, it's an exciting time on the trade front for the entire U.S. beef cattle industry. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Russell. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll take a closer look at how the Cattlemen's Beef Board works to increase beef demand. Plus, a look back at some key moments for the beef industry in 2019. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
For commercial cow-calf producers, crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer is the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Gelbvieh and Balancer females offer maternal superiority through increased fertility, greater longevity, and more pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer cattle deliver increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and excellent carcass merit. Balancer adds the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. Gelbvieh and Balancer, the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Find out more at the website gelbvieh.org.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind. We designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you, for you. With improved visibility, better maneuverability, and more ways to customize, so you get everything you need and nothing you don't. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
Welcome back. 2019 was a challenging year in the cattle industry, but there were some bright spots along the way, and attendees at the recent cattle industry convention in San Antonio had a chance to review some of those wins. Here's a look back at some of the key moments that made an impact.
best memory I have over the last 6 years is all the producers I've met that have served on the board, whether they're from California or New York or Florida. You know, we're all the same folks. We really are.
Probably the favorite part of being NCBA president is having the privilege to work for the farmers and ranchers, but it's been the ability to get out and go to the state meetings and see the operations, see that no matter what kind of resources we have, somehow we all end up with a very similar high quality beef product.
80 years ago in Arizona, they saw a need to be a Cattlewomen's group. They were the Cowbells then, and we changed our name in the late 70s to the Cattlewomen. But we've evolved, we come along. Everybody says, oh, I don't want to join you because I don't want to cook and hand out recipes. Well, we don't do that anymore. I truly believe that American National Cattlewomen are empowering women, are giving them the thought that they can go forward.
You know, we do a lot of work with things like sustainability. That's a big topic today. We're raising record amounts of beef today. Record amounts. Most we've ever produced with a third less cattle than we were raising back in the 80s. And to me, that's sustainable. The myth I would like to bust is that, yes, the checkoff dollars are not a tax. This is a producer-driven program to give $1 per head sold to the checkoff so we can promote your product to increase beef demand. You know, if you look at our return on investment, you know, $11.91 per dollar invested to me is huge. I can't find that kind of investment anywhere else.
NCBA has been really involved in fake meat, both in 2018 with the cell-cultured, being sure that USDA and their inspection service was going to have purview over it, to in 2019 really making sure that our plant-based products didn't disparage and weren't misleading. So we're going to continue that into 2020 as the Real Meat Act works its way through Congress so that consumers know what they're getting. NCBA's had a great year on the trade front, starting when we were there at the White House in July to sign the European Union agreement. And then Japan. Japan's our largest export customer, about $2 billion, 25% of our exports. So we got our bilateral that we've really been pushing the administration to get signed. They got that across the finish line. So as of January the 1, we're going to be on a level playing field with all of our competitors in Japan. That really means a lot to every cow-calf producer, every stocker, every feeder. And for all of us, that's a big win.
The possibilities that American National Cattlewomen can take you through the education. We have a leadership education program right now, but we also have our WIRED program, Women in Ranching Education Development. And that is like our prize star. And the biggest thing that these women said from these WIRED events is, when are you going to have the next one?
If I had to claim one memory, it would be hiring Greg Haynes as our CEO at CBB, because he's doing a great job and our office is really clicking right now at headquarters. We've got a new product called the Drive, like a cattle drive, if you will. Golly, we're really working hard to get the word out about the checkoff, and hopefully people will sign up and receive that. It's a free publication, or they can go online and look up all the information they would ever want to know about the checkoff.
My challenge to you as you leave here is to be involved. Be involved at whatever level that you can, whether it's the county level, the state level, or the national level. Find what you're passionate about. Take that up, whether it's nutrition, sustainability, fake meat, whatever. We're gonna leave here and we're on a high. We've been together, and you get back home and it's easy for life to take over, and you're involved in feeding and kids and church and school. But find that one thing that you want to make a difference. And you can make a difference in the beef industry by finding your passion and showing your voice, and let it be heard.
And joining us now is the CEO of the Cattlemen's Beef Board, Greg Haynes. Greg, tell us just a little bit about your background.
Well, Kevin, appreciate you having me here today. So I guess most recently before joining CBB, which has only been about 7 months ago, I was working with the U.S. Meat Export Federation. So I had been there for over 18 years. I had been in the Denver office for a while, actually went to Japan, lived in Japan for about 5 or 6 years, rejoined MEF, was there as the Japan director for an additional 4 years, and then back to the Denver headquarters again, heading up the marketing programs then, and been back there for about 10 years, and then now joined CBB.
Yeah, great history in the beef business and great international experience. I'm curious, how do you believe this experience with USMEF will serve you as you lead the beef board?
I think, with USMEF is actually one of the contractors to the beef board. And so I think that perspective of being a contractor has really helped me as far as understanding, what the checkoff can do, what it can't do, just some of the specifics as far as making sure, there's certain things you can't, the decision-making process, how everything kind of rolls into that annual planning process. Being part of that, I think, has really given me a good insight into that. So, running into the role now, it's like I know a lot of the key players already, the processes again, so this has been very, very helpful just to be able to kind of come in and hit the ground running and work towards doing what we were doing before, which is promoting demand for beef.
You bet. And you have hit the ground running. I've really enjoyed a number of the articles you've already written that have been shown in public press. I'm curious, as CEO, now with 7 months on the job, what are some of your key goals for the next year?
Well, one of the things that's really hit me, I think, is that, the checkoff has been around for over 30 years now. And so the generation of producers that put that in place and, fought the fight to get this in there and, designed it, they thought about how it needed to be done and all this has gone there. Over the last 30 years, I think you've got a whole new generation that's really kind of moved up that doesn't have all that history, and they may not really know all those details about what the checkoff does. And I think this is a huge challenge for us because now, the beef industry and the checkoff are really targets for a lot of different groups that are either trying to do away with it or don't understand it. And so I think this is very important. What we do, what I'm calling is kind of my back to basics strategy. And that's just getting that information out there about how did the checkoff start? Why do we have it? What can it do? What can't it do? Right. Who makes the decisions? There's so much false information out there that we need to address it. And so this misperceptions about it, I think, raises doubts in the minds of the producers about, really what's happening. So they may read something and they say, "Ooh, well, that sounds, like that could be, real, or is that, that sounds kind of sketchy." Right. But most of it isn't true. And so I think that's where we need to be very aggressive and active in getting out there and making sure we've got the facts and that we can counter all these misperceptions that are going on about the checkoff from all sources, all different sources that are out there.
Focus on the fundamentals. And I guess the question I would ask is, what message would you share with our viewers in terms of why you believe the checkoff is so critical to the beef industry?
Well, again, just looking at, beef is kind of the whipping boy right now for, beef production is to blame for global warming and, sustainability and, other environmental issues and nutrition, and is it doing things to support the producers? And to me, I think, this is, the beef checkoff is really the key tool that the industry has to counter this. If we're not talking about the sustainability of the beef industry, if we're not talking about the nutrition or the production practices or promoting it in stores compared to all these other proteins that are out there, there's no one going to be doing that. And so I think a lot of producers lose sight of that, we're in this together. I think the checkoff should be something that really is uniting the industry.
Absolutely.
We've got various infighting and again a lot of this misinformation. So it's critical that the producers understand this, they know the truth, they know the facts about it, what the checkoff is really bringing as far as value and impact for the industry, so that we can go forward and be unified, working to address these concerns.
I believe in the old Ben Franklin quote, either we all hang together or we'll all hang separately.
Exactly.
And I think that's critical for the beef industry.
Yep, I totally agree, and that's what we're trying to really push is, trying to answer those questions, bring unity, get everybody together, working together on the same things instead of worrying about small differences. We all have the same objectives at the end of the day.
Your background and leadership style will serve our industry well. Thank you, Greg.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin.
To learn more about how your checkoff dollars are driving beef demand both here and around the globe, go to beefboard.org and subscribe to The Drive. It's a free newsletter that highlights the positive ways the checkoff is impacting beef producers. Coming up, we'll take you to Oklahoma to see what life is like back home for 2019 Beef Board Chair Chuck Coffey. Don't go away. We'll have more right after this.
Simmons Brothers Limousine in Amherst, South Dakota is a fourth-generation family operation that treats their cattle and their customers right.
Service is one of our number one criteria. We offer a first-year unconditional guarantee on the bulls.
Simmons Brothers breeds top-quality limousine bulls and females, focusing on the traits and the production that will put money in their customers' pockets.
They were commercial cattlemen before they came into the limousine business. They're cattle feeders. They really know the kind of genetics that it takes to be successful.
We're trying to bring a bull that our customer would be able to put on any set of cows, and those calves could earn a premium when he brings them to the sale barn.
You can depend on limousine genetics from Simmons Brothers. Don't miss their 40th annual production sale at 1 p.m. Central Time, Thursday, February 27th. Call today to get a sale catalog and to find out more.
Earlier, we heard about some of the successes of the beef industry in promoting beef to consumers worldwide with the support of Beef Checkoff dollars. The National Beef Checkoff program is led by cattle producers from all across the country, volunteer leaders who are appointed to represent their state and serve on the Cattlemen's Beef Board. Brian Baxter went to Oklahoma to learn more about 2019 Beef Board Chair Chuck Coffey.
It's early morning in southern Oklahoma, and the Coffey family at Double C Cattle Company is hard at work gathering and sorting cows and calves. Chuck Coffey was born and raised in Texas before he met his wife Ruth, an Oklahoma native, who lured him north of the Red River.
I grew up in Texas on a sheep and goat ranch. And of course, when you find a beautiful girl, you kind of tend to follow her. And I did, and we moved to Oklahoma. We were fortunate in that we were able to purchase acreage to the west of my wife's property for our family, and so we did that back in 2013, and we've been managing 20,000 acres with about 1,000 head of cows since.
I've got 2 sons and a daughter. Both sons are currently living on the ranch and working on the ranch every day. My daughter, she lives up in Claremore, Oklahoma with her husband, and she and her husband come down whenever they're available to help us with the ranch also.
Chuck has a passion for the beef industry, and he wants not only his ranch but all operations to have the opportunity for long-term success. That's why he's a firm believer in the value of the Beef Checkoff, a producer-funded marketing and research program designed to increase demand for beef.
You know, back in the 80s, beef demand was falling through the floor. And that's what caused the evolution of the checkoff, and it was producer-driven. Producers got together and said, we've got to do something to support the beef industry. And so the checkoff came into being. One producer alone cannot really make a difference, but when you bring all that money together and figure out where that money is best spent and direct that money to that area to get the highest return on investment, it's huge.
In 2019, Chuck served as chairman of the Cattlemen's Beef Board, the organization responsible for collecting and investing the $1 per head Beef Checkoff.
When I looked into it and figured out it was a way I could serve the industry, you know, it was kind of a no-brainer. I was like, yeah, I would be more than happy to if you think I'm the person you would like to put in that position. My kids sometimes ask me, why do you work so hard for free? And I'm like, I'm not working for free. You know, for every dollar I put into the checkoff, I get $11.91 back. Plus I'm helping 800,000 other producers across the U.S. How do you say no to something like that? It's just it's a win-win.
As Beef Board Chairman, Chuck had a chance to see firsthand how checkoff dollars are put to work on cattle producers' behalf to promote beef not only in the U.S., but in other countries as well.
It's amazing to see how much they enjoy U.S. beef overseas, and to look at their meat cases and their showcases and how they promote U.S. beef. And without the checkoff, without our dollars, that's not going to happen. And me here working on the ranch, I can't go to Japan and promote that and do that. I don't have that kind of time, and neither do the other producers. So it's critical that we keep those funds available to promote beef and increase beef demand, not only in the U.S. but globally.
Although Chuck spent a lot of time the past year traveling on behalf of the beef industry, he admits his favorite place will always be on the ranch, raising cattle with his family.
When I can watch the sun go down and in the morning watch the sun come up and be out here on the ranch and take care of livestock, dogs, horses, children, what better life could there be? But it's a matter of pride to produce a product that is healthy and wholesome and safe to be able to feed the U.S. and feed the world. You know, it's almost a higher calling, if you will, and I truly believe that.
From the Double C Ranch in Oklahoma, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
And joining us now is the new chairman of the Cattlemen's Beef Board, Jared Brackett. Jared, tell us a little bit about yourself and your ascension to this role as president.
So you can essentially say this started about 5 years ago when I got nominated to the Cattlemen's Beef Board. I'm a producer from Idaho, southern Idaho, down by Twin Falls, cow-calf stalker operation run with my wife. We're fifth generation, so we've been there for a couple years, and we have a history of being involved in the industry and giving back to the thing that makes us so much money. So when I had the opportunity to be nominated by the USDA to serve on the beef board, I said, I'm going to jump at that chance and then get a little more involved. You get on a couple committees and then run for leadership, and I was fortunate enough to be selected, and well, here I am today.
That's fantastic, and congratulations for that.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that you have a long history, your family gets really involved. Why do you and your family believe it's so important to volunteer so much of your own time for industry causes and organizations like this?
So it comes back down to grassroots. Decisions are made by people who show up. Okay. And honestly, I think it's really important that our producers show up and they're involved, because if we don't have grassroots people making decisions, then our whole system breaks down. So we've always been involved, and I feel it's important that we continue to have grassroots people show up and be involved.
I couldn't agree more. And so tell me specifically, what are some of your goals as chairman over the next year?
So as chairman, my main goal is to keep the ship sailing straight, right? I mean, nobody wants the wheels to fall off on their term. But,
right.
But in all seriously, we want to continue to make sure people know that they're involved. We're trying to communicate directly with our producers more. We've got a producer communication that's out that's called The Drive. And someone's maybe reconnecting. We did a good job in telling our story when we passed the checkoff originally, but we're trying to educate people again that maybe don't understand exactly what the checkoff is, and maybe that's part of our reason for some of our detractors. So we're really trying to reconnect with our consumers and our producers. Let's keep this thing moving forward.
Yeah, you mentioned you don't want the wheels to fall off, and we laugh about it at one level, but the reality is there are some who would like to destroy the checkoff. And I'm curious, from your perspective, why is the checkoff so important to the beef industry?
So it's our way of telling our story, and we get over $40 million that we allocate every year, or this last year, at the operating committee meeting. And out of that $40 million, if you look at, we got a return of $11.90, that's a huge amount of money spent. But that's just a drop in the bucket compared to what some of these anti-agriculture groups are spending to destroy our way of life. So it's really important that we continue to promote and preserve beef.
I want to put you on a spot for just a minute and ask you a comment that I hear in press and on blogs and so forth that suggests, you know what, beef checkoff's only a tax, and frankly the money only goes to a couple of organizations. What do you say to folks who raise that issue?
So in order to be a contractor for the checkoff, it's pretty stringent as far as the qualifications. You have to be a national organization. You can't have The only work can be done for promotion. It can't be for lobbying, it can't be for policy. And so we've got a number of contractors, whether we're talking about U.S. Cattlemen, who are a new contractor this year that wanted to do a demand study, or Farm Bureau, who's doing, a bunch of ag work in classrooms and stuff, or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, National Meat Institute of America, the U.S. Export Federation.
Right.
These guys do a lot of work for us. So when you look at the number of contractors we have, and I'm going to say there's around 10, I don't know the exact number, but it varies a little bit, but it's hard to be a contractor because they have to do it on a cost recovery basis. So you've got to do the work, and then after you do the work, then you can bill us, and we only reimburse you for the work you did. So it's really not much of a profit deal there. It's actually doing the good work, and that's our job, to make sure that our producers' money is spent correctly.
Right. Thank you so much. That was very good definition of exactly how the checkoff works. We appreciate having you on the show, and thank you for your leadership to our industry.
Thanks, Kevin.
Now, to learn more about your checkoff dollars and how they're being used to increase beef demand, go to beefboard.org and click on The Drive to subscribe to a free newsletter that highlights the positive ways the checkoff is impacting beef producers. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll discuss the Federation of State Beef Councils and how it helps build beef demand. Stay with us.
Out here, you know what needs to be done, and you know what it means to those you're doing it for. But every sunrise brings something new, with the weather, the soil, the markets, your machinery. You can't always predict what it will be. So it's good to know that Ram trucks are more than capable of helping you get it done right.
The Federation of State Beef Councils has a long history of building beef demand through an effective state and national checkoff partnership. We're pleased to have with us today Buck Wehrbein, who was recently elected as chair of the Federation for Ncba. Buck, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and your involvement in the beef cattle industry?
Well, I've been a cattle feeder for 40 years and been involved with Texas cattle feeders, Nebraska Cattlemen, and now the Beef Checkoff throughout that, and have enjoyed this 7 years that I've been on the Nebraska Beef Council and now serving on the Federation. So it's been enlightening and a rewarding thing to work for the beef producers.
Well, tell us a little bit about your role and responsibility as chair of the Federation.
So the Federation is, of course, the Federation of Qualified State Beef Councils, and the Federation provides a lot of services for them that are helpful, including services as easy as printing and backup and supporting them, as well as helping us with, at the state level, of research projects that we might want to fund, and that they can let us know, yeah, that fits in, or it's already been done, or things like that. So they provide a big help to us, and then it allows the state money to go to a federal level and be pooled and have a lot more impact to a lot more people. So in Nebraska, one of our overarching principles is put the money where the people are.
There you go.
We got 4.5 million cattle and 1.7 million people, so we can put it to the Federation and get used a lot more efficiently.
You bet. Well, so to follow on with that, why is it so strategically important for the industry to have a Federation to serve that role? What is the role and the function, the purpose of the Federation for our industry?
Well, it's great to have autonomy and the states doing their own thing, but it also helps to put them together and pool those resources, brain power and money, to put forth a united message and maybe hit some markets we couldn't hit as individuals. So it's really quite important.
So maybe give us an example or two of how the Federation has worked with individual state beef councils to do something that neither one of them could have done individually.
Well, last year, for instance, we had the opportunity to be on MasterChef on Fox, and no state could have done that. And so the Federation was able to put together a deal, and so we were on that, and then we'll also be on their Junior Chef, I think it's called.
Excellent.
And so that was a great opportunity to put our message out to a lot of people on a very popular program that none of the states could have done by themselves.
Right. Well, and I think as we look at all of our competition, plant-based and fake meat, it's never been more important to find ways to concentrate and focus our resources to really drive demand for beef, and we appreciate your leadership in that effort.
Yeah, and of course, we can't disparage anybody, and we don't disparage anybody, but we have so much good Checkoff-funded research showing what our product is, the taste and the nutrition and the safety and so forth, so we can combat that with simply the facts of what...
Getting our message out, our positive message out.
Exactly.
Thank you, Buck. Now, to learn more about the Federation of State Beef Councils, head to ncba.org and click on the Federation tab. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll show you some exciting technology from Corteva that can help you better manage your land and fight back against troublesome mesquite. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Don't miss the 2020 NCBA Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. It's your opportunity to meet with congressional and federal agency leaders to let them know where cattlemen and women stand on critical issues that impact the cattle business and our way of life. Together, we can do more. Make plans to be in Washington, D.C., March 31st to April 2nd for the 2020 NCBA Legislative Conference. Details at ncba.org.
When the field is your office, you never get tired of going to work. Cut, rake, bale, repeat. New Holland offers the power and versatility to get through the day. From small squares to large squares and everything in between, New Holland has you covered. Visit your local dealer today to find out more.
Cattle producers are always looking for ways to grow more forage and maximize their profitability. But weeds and other invasive species can reduce grass yields and hurt an operation's bottom line. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has more on a new product from Corteva that is a game changer in the fight against weeds.
Mesquite has long been the enemy of ranchers who want more grass for their cattle and landowners working to provide an improved landscape for wildlife. Now, Corteva AgriScience has developed a powerful new tool to use in the fight to control mesquite and eventually other problem plants. It's called LandVisor.
So LandVisor is a decision support tool that uses sophisticated imagery and integrates data with personal experience from a personal consultant to help ranchers make better decisions. Most ranchers, most landowners know their land. They drive through it, they look at it, but they see it from the roads. What we're doing is giving them a little bit different perspective using imagery, satellite imagery, aerial imagery, other types of imagery, and bringing in the data behind that imagery to help them see their land from a different perspective and see parts of their land, parts of the information that is given them to help them make better decisions.
The cool thing with LandVisor is that it is a decision support tool. So what this means is a cattleman that's been on the ranch for 5 generations or 5 days, he can learn something from it. So we can take sophisticated imagery, we can take a personal consultation and many ranch visits, and we can put together a specialized plan for the rancher. We can look at things from brush management to species that are important, whether he's ranching for wildlife. We can identify where his more productive grounds are, and we can create a plan that produces the biggest return on his investment for the spraying that he does with mesquite and some other species down the road.
Aimed first at mesquite, LandVisor will ultimately be a tool land managers will be able to use against a variety of invasive species.
We're launching LandVisor this year in the Southwest on mesquite, and there's a reason for that. If we can do mesquite, there's a lot of different things we can do with LandVisor. The potential of LandVisor is really endless. It's a technology that we can take into a lot of different areas. We do have plans for expansion of LandVisor. We're going to be looking at different species in the coming years, prickly pear, and some other ones that we'll be looking at, as well as other industries in the U.S.
LandVisor uses state-of-the-art digital technology teamed with one-on-one expertise from Corteva to give cattlemen and land managers a customized approach to reaching their goals, whether that's growing more grass or sculpting the landscape to benefit wildlife. Several Texas ranchers now have firsthand experience seeing the value LandVisor can bring to their operations.
It was a game changer to me because I didn't know the soil samples, I didn't know the density, and I didn't know the potential that this ranch plot had at that time. And so looking at that program, and you could see on that deal the potential and the potential gain, that changed everything. That opened up my eyes to what I need to do to make this ranch a better ranch and to leave it better than I found it.
So LandVisor came in and did some satellite images of the place. He really zeroed in on what areas will produce the most bang for our buck. And he helped us to see where the highest density of plants were. LandVisor is a very personal interaction. So this starts with communicating with a pasture specialist. We'll take a look at the land, we can create boundaries, and we can chart exactly what they're looking at. We can look through the data, we can find areas where productions can be better, and a lot of times a rancher will think it's somewhere that it's not. So therefore, this is uncovering a different layer that a rancher cannot tell from driving around in a pickup truck or walking through his mesquite. Well, he took all the guesswork out for us. We didn't really know where to start, and he helped us to really pinpoint that. We could have invested a lot of money in some other areas and not realized it until several years down the road that it wasn't going to do anything for us. So we hope that we'll be able to run some more cows on the place. We're thinking that it may increase our carrying capacity by about 44%. And that's just one little area that we targeted, and that's going to increase the carrying capacity for the whole ranch by 44%. So those are some big numbers that we're excited about.
I'm not going to waste that money spraying someplace where it's not good soil and I'm not going to have that good grass. So right there, I'm saving money on that. Looking at where the better grass is and where I can improve that land, and then showing me how many more cattle on there, then I can budget everything I have out, and I can also maybe look into the future as to how much money I'll be making off that little bit of land, and what my cattle need to maybe make for that, so that the spraying is paid for by the cattle. And so that it just really helps a lot.
Not only does LandVisor give landowners the ability to target their investment where it will provide the greatest forage production, it also helps guide the timing of spraying.
What's unique about LandVisor and the mesquite control of the future is that we're being able to monitor it pre, during, and post-treatment. So therefore the condition, the plant vigor, soil temperature, we can look at multiple different types of imagery to see this, and we have a database to understand where the sweet spot is to spray.
If we hadn't have used LandVisor and I would have sprayed just thinking this is the time to spray, I wouldn't have got a kill and I would have wasted my money. And then I might have looked and said, well, that doesn't work, and I don't know what they're talking about, but that's not the case. This lets you know when is the best time to do this and when you're going to get that kill.
It really is kind of industry breaking in terms of what we do with it from there, because we can actually come in then and do some post-treatment analysis as well. So we will come back in, we will look at it a year later, use that in the planning process for the next year. So it builds from one year to the next.
The more information you have about these plants and your land, you're better prepared to come up with a plan of attack against these mesquite and other plants that you want to get rid of. And without that, you're kind of guessing, and you're going to waste money. And as a rancher, you don't want to do that.
In Texas, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Now, if you'd like more information about the new LandVisor tool that can help you make better, more profitable decisions to improve your forage, then just visit the website landvisor.corteva.us. When we return, it's time for a visit with the cowboy poet, Baxter Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When it comes to the beef business, there's no room for gray area. The decisions being made in Washington affect the future of the beef industry, the livelihood of your fellow farmers and ranchers. Your National Cattlemen's Beef Association knows There's what benefits cattlemen, and there's what doesn't. To us, it's as clear as black and white. Visit joinncba.org to learn more.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that.
At Leachman Cattle, we're committed to building more profitable cattle. As a third-generation seed stock producer, our family has been in this business for over 80 years. Today, we have the best technology ever to build more profitable cattle. Our dollar profit index is a leader in the industry to help you balance all the traits that drive your bottom line. Give us a call or go to www.leachman to learn more.
They'd been out visiting friends for a week. Jesse'd had a good time, but he was itchy to get back to the ranch. Jesse drove in self-defense. His darling wife, for all her virtues, possessed an unerring sense of misdirection. North to her was the lisping Viking. West was what Elmer Fudd did when he was tired. She had trouble with the concept of distances. She'd heard of Miles Hare, Miles Standish, and Miles Davis, but she couldn't relate them to highway signs, and she thought the odometer was aptly named. Well, by mid-afternoon, Jesse was wore out. After cautiously checking the map, he decided there was no way to get lost, so reluctantly, he asked his wife to drive. He walked back to the little travel trailer that they were pulling, threw her an encouraging wave, and climbed in. As she picked up speed, Jesse peeled down to his skivvies and lay down on the bed. He was dreaming of down wire and water gaps when something woke him up. They were stopped. He slid over to the door, stepped out onto the shoulder, and walked around to the end of the trailer. He took a peek and realized, well, they were only at a stop sign at a sleepy little crossroads. At least we're not lost, he thought gratefully. And then he heard the crunch of gravel. In a desperate lunge, he almost caught the aluminum awning strut, but he stepped on a bottle cap and skittered sideways like a bad billiard shot. He shouted and ran after her, mincing down the highway in a sort of a plucked chicken ballet. She drove merrily off. He stood alongside the road, sore-footed, white, embarrassed and hatless, in his threadbare, holy fruit of the looms with the frayed elastic and baggy seat. He looked like Cupid gone to seed. Well, Jesse called a ride, arrived home before his wife, had a couple toddies, and went out to water the lawn. She came whipping up the driveway about 20 minutes later, saw him setting the sprinkler on the dry spot, and drove plumb through the garage without activating the automatic garage door opener, and then derailed near the propane tank in the backyard. It was a story that wasn't near as funny the first time he explained it to the insurance adjuster. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Every year, the NCBA team works hard to bring entertaining and motivating speakers to the Cattle Industry Convention, and this year was no exception. Russell Nemitz is standing by with former astronaut Scott Kelly, who kicked things off at the opening general session.
Well, each year, the Cattle Industry Convention features some of the very best motivational speakers out there, which empower all of us to be better human beings. And this year is no exception, with U.S. astronaut Captain Scott Kelly, who among his many achievements most recently is breaking the record for the sheer amount of time spent in space. And Captain Kelly, thank you for being with us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. And first thing I want to ask you is, what drove you to become an astronaut and decide to spend an entire year's worth of time in space eventually?
Well, I was a military pilot, a test pilot in the Navy. And, you know, at a certain part in your test flying career, you're really motivated to fly the next most complicated vehicle, which in this case was the space shuttle when I became an astronaut. So it was just kind of a natural thing that, at a certain point in your career you apply. And in my case, to be the pilot and then later the commander of the space shuttle. And my career took a little bit of a sidetrack because after I did that, I got more involved in the long duration space flight and flew a 6-month flight. And my first long flight ended in 2011, and then NASA started talking about sending 2 people into space for a year. I thought, spending a year in space would be a challenging thing to do.
Well, that's pretty cool, and we're glad that you did. So explain what your message to cattlemen and cattlewomen was here at the Cattle Industry Convention in San Antonio about that experience 229 miles above Earth.
So my talk I give is to entertain, inspire, and inform. So I have some stories that talk about my life from the time I was a little kid that started off as a very poor student, how I was able to change that, and then go on later to fly in the Navy and then at NASA as an astronaut. So the messaging I have is about doing stuff that's really hard and challenging, and how I was able to do that. This kid from New Jersey that, like I said, wasn't a particularly good student. And I have stories that go into more detail on each one of those messages, and I kind of sum it up at the end. So hopefully they'll find things that I have to say that they can use in their, everyday lives and their businesses to help them do better.
Well, Captain Kelly, we appreciate you taking a little bit of time and joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Thank you very much.
All right, Kevin, just another great example of why the Cattle Industry Convention and Ncba trade show is simply out of this world. With that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we take a look back from the events in San Antonio. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.